The elevator doors opened onto a hotel floor that wasn't supposed to exist. The lights above me flickered, buzzing faintly like they hadn't been changed in years. The carpet looked uneven, seams showing where sections had been patched. The first door in sight had a number plate that read 1203. The problem was, our hotel directory in the lobby only went to 11 floors. I was in town for a work conference, staying at a modern business hotel that felt sterile, but safe. The kind of place with a clean white lobby, polished glass elevators, and big screens showing the day's events. I'd been there 3 nights already. Every floor I'd seen was spotless, with the same patterned carpet and brushed metal door handles. That night, I was tired, half on autopilot when I stepped into the elevator. I almost pressed the wrong button because the panel was just a single row of numbers, close together, easy to hit by accident. I corrected myself, phone in hand, expecting the familiar soft ding, the clean hallway, and my room exactly where I left it. Instead, the car slowed and gave a faint ding, but no button was lit. The doors opened on a hallway marked with the 1200s. The wall sconces were mismatched, older than the ones upstairs. The signs looked like they hadn't been replaced in a decade. This wasn't on the lobby directory. I thought it had to be a staff floor or maybe something under renovation. Hotels sometimes kept old levels closed off, and elevators could glitch. I reached out to press my real floor again, ready to ignore whatever I'd seen. But the panel didn't respond. I tapped the button harder. No light, no movement. The door stayed open longer than usual, holding in place like the car wanted me to step out. The air from the hall smelled faintly of mildew, warmer than it should have been. I decided I'd at least look for a stairwell. I stepped out slowly, my phone flashlight pointed low. The carpet here was different, flatter, worn smooth in a long trail where people had walked. A few of the doors didn't even have handles, just metal plates covering the holes where locks used to be. The wallpaper had small patches where it looked like someone had repainted in a different shade. This wasn't made for guests anymore. Behind me, the elevator doors closed with a heavy clunk. I turned too late to stop it. The call button on the wall didn't light when I pressed it. A moment later, I heard the elevator descend, the cables humming as it left me there alone. I pulled up the hotel's app on my phone. Same clean interface, same list. Guest floors 1 through 11. No mention of a 12th floor. No 1200s level rooms. I tried calling the front desk, but the screen froze and said, no service. Thick concrete maybe. Dead zone. My only option was to find the stairs. At the far end, I spotted a fire escape map under a fogged plastic cover. It showed the shape of the hotel and the exits, but the section where I was standing had a strip of black tape pressed over it. The kind of tape you'd tear from a roll. Someone had tried to hide this level in plain sight. That's when I heard it. Heavy footsteps in the hallway I had just left behind. Quick, deliberate, and getting closer. It only took me a second to realize someone was running straight for the stairwell. I threw the door open and stepped inside. A slam echoed above me as the hallway door burst open behind me. The same footsteps hammered on the stairs now. They weren't wandering. They were following me. Something in my gut told me to run, and a second later the sound of the stairwell door slamming shut confirmed I was right. I bolted downward, shoes pounding on concrete. The first door I reached was locked. I rattled the bar hard, but it didn't give. The footsteps closed in, fast and heavy. I tore down another flight, my hand slick on the rail, lungs burning. The next door opened. I yanked it wide and glanced back just long enough to see a shadow of a man rounding the stairs above. I didn't wait. I dove through, slammed the door, and forced it shut with my shoulder. The hallway I stumbled into was bright and normal. patterned carpet, clean walls. A brass plaque by the elevator said 10th floor. No guests in sight, but it looked like the hotel I recognized. Behind me, the stairwell door rattled hard. The man was yanking it with everything he had, metal frame clanging against the strike plate. Then, suddenly it stopped. The silence felt worse than the noise. Later in my room, I locked the latch and the deadbolt. I sat on the edge of the bed, still catching my breath. When I finally asked a staff member the next day, she lowered her voice and said the 12th floor had been sealed off years ago after a fire. It wasn't for guests anymore. Then she apologized without saying what for. The next morning, I took the elevator down. At the 10th floor, the car paused to let people in. I stared at the panel. The buttons were in a single row, neat and compact, and I could picture how easily my thumb might have slipped if there had been another number there once. There were faint scratches in the brushed metal, shallow arcs where a button had been removed. What unsettles me most is knowing the sealed floor doesn't stay empty, and anyone could end up there at any time, dealing with who knows what. Room 112 was marked occupied every night I worked, but in 2 months on the desk, I never once saw anyone open that door. I'm Nate. I took the graveyard shift at a roadside motel off the interstate, the kind that hums under a flickering sign and fills up with truckers when storms roll through. The building is a straight single row of doors facing the lot. Lobby in the center behind a glass wall, 2 cameras inside and 2 pointed at the parking spaces. You can see almost the whole property from the front desk. Quiet nights are the deal. A couple of late walk-ins, a coffee refill, a book to keep me awake until the first light clips the eaves. If you've ever worked a place like this, you know the rhythm. I clock in at 11. The last of the day, staff drifts out with a good night. I print the register, count the drawer, run eyes across the monitors. Eventually, the highway noise thins. By 2 a.m., the lot is a flat black mirror. The only interruptions are the occasional diesel idling too long or a car missing its spot and straddling the line. Housekeeping comes at 9 sharp, turns rooms, leaves a neat stack of slips. Made, cleared, no personal items. Every slip for 112 said the same thing. Made, cleared, no trace of living. That would have been an odd footnote if the same name wasn't stamped on the ledger night after night. Harris. Always Harris. I never checked a Harris in. No one on days said they remembered him either, but the box on the screen was always green. Occupied. I started watching that door. The curtains never changed. The light under the threshold never came or went. If someone was in there, they were a ghost. I don't believe in ghosts. The first time I saw movement, it was small. Curtain fabric ticking inward as if someone slid along the wall and brushed it with their sleeve. There wasn't a car in the space for 112. The lot was empty. I stepped outside like I was taking a smoke, hands in my pockets, and waited. Nothing. No second twitch. No sound behind the metal door. The camera that covers that side washed out in the glare of a pole light. When I checked the playback, it was just static sparkle on glass. My manager had an answer for everything that didn't require him to get up from his office chair. Corporate hold, he said when I asked about 112. Don't assign it. Don't worry about it. He said it fast, like a script. I let it go. You have to pick your battles on overnight. There are worse problems than a room with a permanent green box that never produces a person. But things started to stack. One night, coming back from locking the soda machine cabinet, I walked and heard the low fuzz of a television through the wall at 112. I paused, listening. It wasn't loud, just a human voice down at the level you'd use if you didn't want anyone in the next room to hear you. I jotted the time, 2:30 a.m. and told myself I'd mention it on the morning report. When the housekeeping slip came in later, it said what it always said: TV unplugged, room empty, bed made. I checked the plug myself on my lunch break. It was out. After that, I kept the monitor with the exterior camera up on a bigger tile. Whenever I walked the lot, I watched reflections: window glass, chrome bumpers, the dead black of the pool surface. Sometimes I'd catch a shape in the reflection of 112's pane, like someone standing just inside, but when I'd look head on, it was only me and that white curtain. I started to feel that pre-decision hum you get right before you do something you know you'll have to explain later. The decision came on a Tuesday. Wind all night, chain on the pool gate clacking, highway hiss swollen by passing semis. I was at the gate clipping the padlock when a door closed behind me. It wasn't my door. It wasn't the lobby. It was the soft latch of a guest room door. I turned, and in the slice between two cars, I saw 112's handle settle. The curtain lifted an inch, then fell. The lot was empty. Far off, a horn blew and the sound carried. I stood there longer than I should have, just listening to the quiet. Back inside, I printed the register again and went line by line. Harris, Harris, Harris. Same driver's license number every night. I looked up the original record. The check-in was months ago, a Wednesday afternoon, paid by card. The card expired in July. The profile photo scan was crooked and faint. The address listed was a P.O. box. It smelled like a copied entry someone never closed. I checked the notes, expecting to see the word comp or corporate or hold. There was a single typed line: do not reassign, no reason, no initials. My manager's logins wouldn't have left it blank like that. Whoever wrote it didn't want to be identified. There are paper records no one touches unless they have to, the kind that live in shoeboxes and old manila folders. I dug through the desk drawer and found what I wasn't looking for: a maintenance slip for a 112 lock replacement right after Harris's original stay. Lock pride. Interior strike plate bent. Replaced. The signature was from a contractor we no longer used. Under that, a sticky note in the handwriting of the previous night clerk: if 112 calls, let it ring. My stomach went cold. Not the air, not the room, me. I had enough now to call my manager. I told him about the TV, the door, the lock slip, the note. He said two things: don't open that room, and I'll handle it in the morning. At a little past 3 a.m., I stood outside 112 with my master key anyway. Not because I wanted to be a hero, because if someone was living in there, I needed to either help them or get them out before the day staff ended up alone with a problem. The hallway was still. The hum of the ice machine filled the space like a thin wall. I put my ear close to the seam of the door and heard it. Breath. Not a wheeze or a snore. Just slow, precise breathing on the other side of the metal. The kind of breathing you do when you know someone is listening. I didn't open it. I'm not stupid. I backstepped until I could see the lobby glass, then returned to the desk and pulled up the camera feeds. For a long time, nothing moved. I watched the digital clock roll. Then the lobby phone rang. The screen flashed, room 112. Against the sticky notes advice, I picked up. A man's voice, flat and calm. Why are you watching me? There's a tone people have when they say something they expect you to feel. He didn't ask angry. He asked like he'd already decided what came after my answer. I didn't give one. I set the receiver down soft and slid the bolt on the lobby door out of habit I'd never needed before. The camera facing the row skipped once, then steadied. The handle on 112 turned. The door came wide open and a man stepped out. He wore dark clothes that could have been any uniform or none at all. No hat, no bag, tall, but not broad. I know the shape of people who fill doorways. He didn't. He thinned them. He looked first left, then right, then straight toward the lobby. It wasn't a long walk across the lot, but he didn't rush. He moved like someone who had never tripped. I could hear the rubber soles on concrete through the glass when he reached the entrance. He tried the handle. The deadbolt held. The whole door shook once, a polite rattle like a test. He didn't knock. I backed into the office and dialed 911. I gave the address, said the words you're supposed to say. Unknown male, unauthorized room, attempting entry. The dispatcher's voice was steady. Stay inside. Officers en route, she said, pronouncing it exactly like we did. On the monitor, the man leaned close to the glass like he was fogging it. He didn't. He turned his head instead and looked past me into the lobby like there might be someone else behind me. Then he walked out of frame. I switched to the side camera that covers the staff door. The handle jiggled once, so light it might have been the wind, then went still. The minutes between a call and a cruiser are longer than any other kind. I kept waiting for him to circle back. He didn't. I stayed on the line with the dispatcher until blue lights finally painted the pole and the wall. The officers cleared the lot first. They had me key 112 with them. The room was what the slips always said. Bed made tight, towels folded to triangles, the plastic cups nested, the TV unplugged. No luggage, no toothbrush, no scent of someone's day. The only sign that a human being had been in that space was a shoe print on the bath mat, flat, damp, and disappearing as I looked at it. I told them about the call. They pulled the phone log and said they'd request the recording from the motel's provider. When they left, my manager had arrived, hair half-brushed, shirt tucked like he'd driven one-handed. He shook the officer's hands too long, walked them out, and closed the door. It's handled, he said without looking at me. He glanced at 112 on the screen and tapped the desk with his ring. Don't open that room again. If you hear anything, call me. Don't call them. There are tones managers have too. That one said, "This is bigger than your pay grade." I made it to the end of my shift, but I was done. The day staff drifted in. I watched the first housekeeping cart roll past the window and pause outside 112. The housekeeper's knuckles tapped, the door opened, the cart moved on. Slips filed at 9 said what they always said. By noon, I'd written a 2-line resignation and left the key fob on the manager's desk. He never called to ask why. Some places are glad to let you go if it means you won't ask the wrong follow-up question. A week later, I drove past the motel at night. Habit. It was on my way home if I stayed off the interstate and cut through the service row behind the strip center. The lot was mostly dark. Slow season, maybe. A few cars tucked under the lights, bug wings flicking through the cones. I told myself I wouldn't look. I always tell myself that right before I look. Every room was black except one. The light behind 112 was thin and stale, the color a compact fluorescent makes after it's been on too long. As I rolled by, barely touching the gas, the curtain lifted 2 fingers width, just enough to make a triangle of glass. A face filled it. No, not even the whole face. Just the eyes and the bridge of a nose, level with mine. I watched in the rear view. The curtain fell as my taillights faded. I kept going. Not faster, not slower, just steady. I didn't feel haunted. I didn't feel cursed. I felt watched in the most ordinary way, by a man who had claimed a room and never intended to leave it. It was 2 a.m. when I woke to the sound of the adjoining door in my motel room rattling against its lock. The metal handle jerked softly, like someone was standing on the other side, testing it again and again. I was traveling for work, breaking up a long route between client visits with an overnight stay at a roadside motel. I wasn't picky. I just needed a place with decent Wi-Fi, a working shower, and coffee in the morning. The front desk clerk slid me a key card in a little paper sleeve and went back to whatever was playing on his phone, barely looking at me. The place was one of those highway motels with outdoor entrances and a balcony walkway. 2 stories, U-shaped lot, a soda machine humming down by the stairs. My room sat halfway down the 2nd floor, overlooking the lot. Inside it was the usual, polyester bedspread, low dresser with a bolted-down TV, and a small desk pressed against the wall. I noticed a connecting door by the bed, deadbolt on my side, and barely thought about it. Just part of the furniture of cheap motels. I did my routine, answered a couple late emails, folded my dress shirt over the chair, and set my suitcase against the wall near the desk. I washed up, killed the lights, and let the soft white noise of the air conditioner smooth out the distant sound of freeway tires. When I drifted off, the building felt quiet and thin, like a plywood version of a real place. Somewhere below, the vending machine clicked. A car door thumped shut out in the lot. Then nothing for hours, until the metallic rattle shook me awake. At first I told myself it was pipes or the air conditioner knocking in the wall. But the noise had rhythm. It wasn't a random creak or a pop. It was the crisp click of a handle being turned just to the stop and let go. A twist, a pause, then another. My eyes adjusted to the dark. The curtain leaked a thin gray stripe of parking lot light along the carpet. I lay there listening, heartbeat thudding in my ears, and tried to convince myself I'd dreamed it. I sat up and held my breath. Nothing. Just the steady hum of the air conditioner and the faint whir from the little fridge by the door. The room felt normal again. I exhaled and tried to laugh it off. Cheap motels always had noises. Thin doors, loose fittings, frames that swelled and shrank with the temperature. That's all it was, I told myself. I eased back onto the pillow and pulled the covers up to my chest. The sound came back, sharper. The knob rattled once, then a scrape of metal against the frame, like someone tried a key that didn't quite fit and dragged it back out. Adrenaline pushed me out of bed. I crossed the carpet and stopped a foot from the connecting door. In that spill of gray light from the curtain, I watched the handle twitch. Just a hair. Then stillness. I went to the main door and checked the peephole. The balcony walkway outside was empty, no shadows moving, no footsteps fading away. I slid the deadbolt on the main door and set the chain, then crouched by the connecting door and studied the metal latch plate. Scratches bloom around hotel hardware over time, but these looked worn and clustered at the exact spot where the bolt sank in, like people had fought this door before. My pulse wouldn't calm down. It felt stupid to be this tense about a panel of painted wood. But the seam of that door drew my eyes like a magnet. I could picture a hand hovering inches from mine, separated by nothing but a layer of plywood and a deadbolt the motel probably bought in bulk. The knob turned hard, one firm twist to the stop that thumped through the door. I jumped back. That wasn't wind or a settling frame. Someone had just tried the handle. I grabbed my phone and called the front desk, keeping my voice low. Somebody is trying the connecting door in my room. After a pause, the clerk told me the adjoining room was empty. He said they hadn't rented it in weeks. That sentence landed heavier than the thump. If no one was checked in next door, who was testing the lock? I wheeled my suitcase over and wedged it in front of the connecting door. It wasn't much, but it gave me something between me and that handle. I switched on the lamp and sat back against the headboard with the phone in my hand. I watched the shadow line under the door, like it might move. Every 15 seconds, I checked the time without meaning to. The room felt smaller with the light on, edges sharper, air a little stale. Minutes stretched. Nothing else happened. The quiet made it worse. Sometime around 3:30, a dull thump came from the wall on the other side. Not the sharp pop of plumbing, but weight. One step, then another. They stopped in line with the connecting door and went silent. I held my breath, thumb hovering over the call button again. No voices, no TV murmuring. Just that sense of someone standing still, inches past the panel. The quiet pressed in until the thin color of morning finally crept through the curtain. With daylight in the room, the fear lost a little of its edge. I slid the suitcase aside, hands careful, breath shallow. Part of me wanted to grab my bag and leave without looking. The other part needed to know what I had heard. I unlocked the deadbolt and wrapped my hand around the handle. The metal felt cool from the night. I pulled slowly. The latch clicked back with a small, precise sound, and the door opened inward a few inches. I expected carpet and a mirror image of my room. Instead, the panel opened onto a narrow cavity, a shallow space only a couple feet deep, stale-smelling and dim. At the far side, another heavy door sat flush in its own frame, a double-door system. Soundproofing or fireproofing, maybe. A middle zone no guest was ever meant to stand in. On that opposite panel, around its handle, the metal was smeared with greasy handprints, clear ovals and streaks pressed into a thin film of dust. The marks circled the knob, angled and overlapping like someone had gripped and twisted again and again in the dark. I leaned closer without stepping into the cavity. The air in there held a flat, human smell. Sweat gone stale, oil from skin left too long. The prints were not old. You could see the ridge lines where fingertips had pressed, the shine where the grease cut through the dust. Below the knob, the frame showed fresh gouges, small kinks in the metal, and raw scratches where something flat had been levered and slipped. Whoever had rattled the handle hadn't been randomly trying things. They had been working at this point for a while, focused and patient, in a space that shouldn't have a person inside it. I shut my panel and threw the lock, then stepped back with my heart going hard. Showering could wait. I packed in quick motions, zipped the suitcase, and kept one eye on the seam of the door. At the front desk, I put the key card down and told the manager I needed to check out early. He asked if anything was wrong with the room. I said I had to make up time on my route and left it there. Out in the lot, the morning felt too bright. I loaded the suitcase into the trunk and slid behind the wheel with that residual tremor in my hands. I didn't look back up at the balcony. I just eased out onto the service road and merged toward the freeway, replaying the sound of that one hard twist of the knob. An hour later, I stopped for gas. When I popped the trunk to grab a bottle of water, I saw it. Along the handle of my suitcase, faint black smudges streaked the plastic, thin, oily arcs that matched the shape of fingers, the same greasy residue I'd seen smeared around the metal handle inside that cavity. Seeing those prints on my suitcase, I realized leaving the motel meant I didn't leave it, or them, behind.